This is the last video in the series of Word Unit C, in which this is entitled Adding Footnotes and Endnotes, which is going to be located on page Word 66 and 67. Footnote and endnotes are used in printed documents to provide further information, comment on, and supply references to the text in a document. A footnote or endnote is an explanatory note that consists of two linked parts. The note reference mark that appears next to the text to indicate that additional information is offered in a footnote or endnote, and the corresponding footnote or endnote text itself. Word places footnotes at the end of each page and endnotes at the end of the document. You insert and manage footnotes and endnotes in a document using the tools in the Footnotes group on the Reference tab. And so let's take a look at step 1 on page Word 66. If you have your Home tab up here, this is where we should be at, but it tells us here that we're going to place the insertion point after cost. So if we click on cost here, and that's in the top row of the tab text. Next, we're going to click the References tab. So if we click on this tab right up here, this is our References tab, and then it tells us we're going to click the Insert Footnote button in the Footnotes group. So here's our Footnotes group right here, and we just want to click on this big button right here. If we were going to insert an endnote, we would click here, but we're going to click right here to insert in our footnote. And then you'll notice that a note reference mark has appeared right after cost, and in this case it's a superscript number 1, so you see where it's a small number 1. And the insertion point now moves to below the separator line at the bottom of the page, which is right here. And a note reference mark can be either a number, a symbol, a character, or a combination of characters. So now this is getting ready for us to type in our footnote. Of course, you may need to scroll up as needed to see the note reference mark if it's above the page of where you're looking at that moment. Step 2 tells us that we're going to type in to the footnotes area, international flights, travel insurance, visas, and taxes are not included in the tour price. So we can see that up here, that this is kind of telling us that in this cost right here that we see, that is not including the visas, taxes, travel insurance on there as well. So you can see that that's notifying the individual user that that is the information they need to be looking at, and understanding that there is going to be some additional cost in on this. On step 3, it tells us that we need to place the insertion point at the end of the quotation on the bottom of page 1. So we go down to the bottom of page 1 here, and here's the quotation. We're going to place our insertion point just right after the quotation mark. Next, we're going to click the Insert Footnote button. So we're going to go back up here to our Footnotes group, click up, insert in our footnote, and now notice it's automatically numbered it and placed the superscript 2 right here. And then it tells us that we're going to type in April 12th of 2009. So that lets us know when this quote was given. On step 4, it tells us to scroll to the middle of page 2. And we need to place our insertion point at the end of the second line in the bulleted list. Now remember, we have two different types of list here. We have our numbered list up here, but here we have our bulleted list. So it's going to be right after the word polio there. Once we have that, we need to insert another footnote. And notice that even though this is on the second page, it has now numbered this as footnote number 3. And then we need to type in vaccination requirements, our subject to change, and should be confirmed before departure. So once again, another note letting us know that here's some vaccinations and everything, but you need to check on it because they're subject to change. Of course, to change the number format of the note reference mark, or to use a symbol instead of a character, that's when you need to click on the launcher in the Footnotes group to select from the options in the Footnote and Endnote dialog box. Then you can click Apply. So if we click on here, notice that here we have our number format, or we can choose symbols and everything else here, and then once you have that, you can click on apply, but we're not going to change that for this document. On step 5, it tells us that we need to scroll up and place our insertion point after the Everest Base Camp Trek heading. And right here we have this, and we're going to place our insertion point right here on there. And once we have that, it tells us that we are now going to click the Insert Footnote button again. And now notice that, look at the numbering. It has this as number 3 now, because when you insert a new footnote between existing footnotes, Word automatically renumbers the footnotes so that they appear in correct order. And then once we have this, we are going to type in due to altitude, terrain, and distance walked. This trek is for strong mountain walkers only. Okay, so once again, that just gives some additional information. On step 6, it tells us we want to press Control Home to go back all the way up to the top of the document. And now what we're going to do is we're going to click on this where it says Next Footnote button. So if we're looking for our footnotes, when we click on the next footnote, it's going to automatically take us down to the number 1 on there. And so this is where we need to go to the first reference mark in this document. On step 7, it tells us that we need to click the next footnote button again. However, in this case, we're going to press the delete key to select the number 2 reference mark and then delete it again on there. So if I press my delete key once, notice it just highlights the reference mark for the second footnote. But when I hit delete again, then it will actually remove the reference mark on there. As it says, the reference mark and the associated footnote are deleted from the document and the footnotes are automatically renumbered. You must select a reference mark to delete a footnote. You cannot simply delete the footnote itself on there. Of course, to convert all footnotes to endnotes, you can also use the launcher in the footnotes group, and then that's when you can click on convert and then click OK, and then you can close it, and that will convert all your footnotes to endnotes. On step 8, it tells us that we're going to scroll to the bottom of page 2. So let's just go down all the way to the bottom of page 2. It tells us that notice the remaining footnotes have been renumbered on there. So this was 3 and 4, now it says 2 and 3. Now we're going to press our Control and Home key to go back up to the top of the document. And at this point, make sure that you do save your document. And now you are ready to submit this to the course sites for the Word C walkthrough.